But like, it's a very parental move to be like, I don't want you to do anything that's going to like take you kind of out of character or make you feel worried or concerned. And so I'm just not going to tell you this thing. And I think to me, that's not a child behavior. And it strikes me that this is something that, I mean, we see him do it for Sirius only, really, where he kind of is like, I'm not going to tell you about my scar hurting. I'm not going to tell you about all, how worried I am about the Triwizard Tournament. Like all of these moments where he really, because he's like, I don't want you to put yourself in a position where you have the potential to end up back in it.
Well, and that's the worst part about Harry being the most mature person in the room here, because whenever Sirius does finally, whenever he's leaving Grimmauld Place and Sirius gives him the mirror that Harry never finds out about until the end of the book, Harry doesn't even open it up because he knows that Sirius is reckless and he can't trust his own actions. So, like, as a parent, my biggest, like, not my biggest worry, because this wouldn't happen, but I don't ever want my kids to look at me and go, you're reckless, I can't trust you, I have to be the adult here.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the interesting things about the dynamic between Harry and Sirius is, yes, he's his godfather, he's almost like an uncle figure in a lot of ways, but Sirius sometimes sees Harry more like James, more like a best friend, more like an equal, and there are times like this where Harry, I think, returns that. He doesn't necessarily see Sirius as an adult. He sees Sirius as a peer in a way, and therefore he has to kind of take care of him. Because that's how Harry feels about all his friends, right? All his friends who are around his age, is that he kind of has to be the one to kind of take care of them all should things go bad. And it's again this very odd relationship they have because of the circumstances surrounding how they meet, and that Sirius was in Azkaban for so long and all of these things, and it leads to the tragedy of this is not how things are supposed to be, and therefore there's a tragic ending there.
Well, and the tragedy at the end of the book never has to take place if Sirius could just show Harry a little bit of responsibility. Sirius is so reckless that Harry can't trust anything that he tells him, that he gives him, that he could possibly do. He can't trust any action that Sirius has. And all of the entire end of this book could have been avoided if Sirius could have just not been so childish.
But I hate to. This is so hard because I think that Can you imagine? Let's just extend our minds for a second, right? So Sirius ends and goes to Azkaban at the end of the first Wizarding War, but this. Can you imagine being back in a position, back in your childhood home, back with a child who looks just like your best friend, and back in a situation that looks so much like what it was when you were, 20-something? I feel like, again, this kind of arrested development, suspended space that Sirius has occupied for almost half of his life is so difficult to get away from, even when you've been charged with kind of taking care of a child. And I can't imagine what it is to try and reconcile those two things. And I feel like all of the recklessness is very much what he did and would have done in the first Wizarding War with James. Mm-hmm. And I feel like part of the trick of this is it feels too similar to the way that it was before for him to be able to disassociate the way he needs to be able to take care of Harry effectively. And so there's so many similarities that he can't make the necessary distinctions. And I don't want to absolve him of the fact that he should have, but I do think I understand, at least in some capacity, why it was so hard for him to be able to do it, because it feels so much like it did before. And I think in this way, this is Sirius's desire to try to rewrite the past the best he can.
Yeah.
And I think
well, it's almost like 13 years passed and nothing changed.
Yeah.
Like, he came out and literally everything was basically
Yeah.
the same around him.
And that's actually the first time I even really thought about it from that perspective, which is such a solid point. That when he went in, it was a war, and then he came out, and it was, or I mean, I guess it was like a tiny break, arguably the fourth year. But for the most part, he ended up going like right back into this, and not to make this even more depressing. But one thing that I was thinking about is how much do we think this is related to Harry having a fear, like just like an innate fear of losing Sirius, just because he is not used to having any type of adult parental figure in his life. And is it both ways? You know, Sirius lost James.
Yeah.
Sirius is unfortunately sometimes looks to Harry like he's James. Like is there some part of this that's rooted in both of them being afraid to lose each other? Like, is this the last time I'm going to see you? Is this the last time I'm going to talk to you? Because man, if it is, that's messed up.